What's going on, traders? This is Andrew O'Connell with Pristine Capital. Welcome to our weekend watch list video for March 28th, 2021. So let's jump right into it. First of all, what is the purpose of our weekend watch list video? What we want to do is identify high probability trading setups for the upcoming week. We want to make sure that we're doing a lot of preparation when the market is closed. That way we are all ready to go by the time the market opens and we are well prepared. We want to create an action plan and set alerts for ourselves. And we want to be mentally prepared for successful execution in the week ahead. So let's jump into this week's list. And one thing that you'll notice about this list, I've been putting this together throughout the weekend. I've made a bunch of changes. What you'll notice is there's some more defensive areas of the market on the list. And that is in light of the momentum that we're seeing in areas like consumer staples, like utilities, like healthcare. Typically what happens is as investors are expecting, an economic boom, they'll start allocating to cyclicals, industrials, financials, all those different areas of the market. Once the market starts to price in an economic slowdown, that's when you get the move into defensives, utilities, healthcare, those kinds of areas, treasuries as well. So if you'll notice over the past month or two, this whole inflation accelerating, growth is accelerating, reopening trade has really hit, full stride. And I think at this point, the cat's out of the bag. That trade is really out to the masses. This new phenomenon of staples, utilities, all that sort of stuff, I don't really see many people talking about it. And, I started reading some economic papers this weekend, and these economic forecasters, they pretty much have this down to a science where they look at the same leading indicators and they can sort of map out the economic cycle. Definitely not rocket science for economists. And what I'm reading is there's going to be sort of like a peak in economic growth that's going to happen in Q2 of 2021. And then once we get that big burst of like, okay, the economy's reopened, now we're on full cylinders, all that. Once that occurs, then on a rate of change basis, we're going to decelerate again. So what I'm assuming, and it really doesn't even matter what I think, but this momentum that we're seeing in consumer staples, all those areas, that is institutional players starting to say, okay, we already made money on this reopening trade. Now let's focus on the next thing, which is, the slowdown that happens after the reopening. So what I want to do is make sure that we're tackling that early and we're getting some of those exposures on the books before it becomes, a big time consensus trade. That doesn't mean the cyclicals and the reopening names can't run further. Maybe they run throughout the entire second quarter. But with how extended a lot of them are at this point, I think it's safe to say, a lot of the smart money is probably in those trades already. And at this point, it's probably like momentum traders and, maybe we'll get a boost from this new stimulus bill that's going to be talked about next week. But I just want to make sure, I'm getting some exposure in these other areas. So with that being said, let's jump in. We'll take a look at Costco first. And let's pull up Costco. Okay. Yeah, so Costco, you can see this trend where, Costco had a really nice run post-COVID. This was definitely a huge winner. I remember trading options in Costco, and this was a really nice winner for me in 2020. Then the trade soured. So you can see Costco as this whole economic growth, inflation accelerating, growth accelerating narrative took hold. Costco really fell into the abyss. And you can see this was when the reflation trade really started accelerating. This one just took a total dive. Now what you can see is Costco made, right here, it made a low down here. Then you can see, this is a pretty crude drawing, but then you can see it made a high. And then right here, you can see it made a higher low. So this looks to me like this could be the beginning of an uptrend in Costco. Now we had another leg up, which really accelerated into the end of the week. You can see that Costco crossed above this yellow line here, which is the 200-day moving average. So the 200-day is like, long term, what is price doing here? And this one, it's the first day above the 200-day moving average. So this one, I really like this. Maybe for the next like 3 or 6 months. Like I'll likely be adding Costco into the trend portfolio, but I wanted to include it, in this weekend watch list as well. I have for my trigger level for this one, I have 352.66, and I want to make sure I can sit through a pullback in this one, because in the very short term it is a little bit extended. But I think Costco is going to have some room to run here. So Costco, number one. Next on the list is Activision. Oh, and one thing real quick about Costco. So it's a little bit extended in the short term. And you can see here, this is the distance from the 20-day moving average. I typically don't like to buy things when they're this extended. But if we go to the weekly chart, you can see that on this weekly, it's not extended at all, especially compared to a lot of other areas of the market. So if we look at the weekly, this is pretty much the first leg of this move higher. So like I said, maybe I enter the stock and I sit through like a small shallow pullback, but this is one that I definitely want to gain some exposure to. So if we look next on our list, we have Activision. So this one right here, you can see we just broke above the 20-day simple moving average on Friday. Let me just zoom in a little bit better. We're above the 5-day EMA. We are not yet above this 50-day moving average, but you can see we just crossed above this very high volume node. You can see it right here. We had a big volume spike. Looks like some accumulation in this stock. And I think what's interesting to me is when I look more so at this weekly chart. So you can see on this weekly, we are holding this 20-period moving average. So I like Activision, where if we start to see some rotation maybe out of these cyclical areas of the market, I could definitely see some money moving to Activision. So I have an alert set at 92.60 in Activision. Let's go to our next name. Next name is Digital Turbine. This is one of my favorite names to trade. And this one, if you take a look here, it's been consolidating sideways. Didn't really have much strength on Friday, with the rest of the market. So we'll have to see with this one. But this one I have an alert set for $76.70. So basically what I'm trying to see is, okay, if we can clear above this 50-day moving average, I'm interested in reinitiating my position in apps, in my trading account, because with apps, a lot of times you don't want to wait until it's at $90. With the way that this one has been moving, it's chopping within a range. I want to see if I can get an entry at the bottom end of the range here. Next name on our list, another more consumer defensive name. I added this one into the trend portfolio about 2 weeks ago, and this one is looking solid. So you can see this is putting in a very similar pattern to Costco, where it really hit a nadir down here, and then we made a high in our first higher low, and then a higher high here. One thing that's interesting about Walmart is when you look at this volume over here on the side, you can see that we are clearing past, this shelf of volume right here. So if you look, we just cleared that level, and we have sort of like a volume air pocket until we get up to here around like 137. That coincides with these key moving averages. So it coincides with the 200-day and the 50-day. So I'm liking Walmart heading into next week. I have my alert set there for 135.29, basically right above where it's currently trading. Next name on our list, we have AVGO, which is Broadcom. This is a semiconductors name. It's showing some nice strength here, and look at this accumulation. This is a really high volume bar here that occurred a few days ago, and then on Friday we had a nice move higher in a lot of different areas of the market, with semis being one of them. So this name, as this trend in the semiconductors continues, I am looking for new all-time highs in AVGO. And I have my alert set for this one for $483.25. Next on our list here is Home. So this is a consumer cyclical specialty retail name. Excuse me, I'm like tongue-tied today. Yeah, it's a specialty retail name. This one, it's trading above the 20-day moving average, and it's above the 50-day. Found support right at the 50-day moving average, and you can see we had a breakout from this range right here. This range of about $22 to $27.50. We retested inside of that range, and then we moved higher. So I'm looking for higher levels in this name as well. I have my alert set at $28.78. Next name on our list, this is more like an event-driven thematic play here. This one is Viacom. So one thing you'll notice, if you watch the macro video, I talked about how there was this, big-time trader in China, big-time prop trader that was liquidated from a bunch of his positions on Friday. And these were, the block trades that everyone was talking about that were really big. And Viacom has lost, it was at $100, and it got super extended here. And then it went all the way down. It hit a low of like $40. Yeah, $39, off slightly from the low. But yeah, all things considered, this one's down over 50% over the course of 1, 2, 3, 4. In 5 trading days, down 50%. So my thesis here is that was a huge dislocation in the market. Stocks don't normally go down 28% in a day like this. So I think as soon as that big seller is done offloading his position, this one I think could be an attractive buy here. One thing I'm looking at as well in this Simply Wall Street, just to get a quick and dirty look at valuation, is Viacom, at this point, given that huge sell-off, it's trading, according to Simply Wall Street, at a discount to fair value of about 23%. So yeah, you can see fair value is a bit higher. So really what I'm seeing here is this sell-off is probably a bit overdone. So I do have an alert set. If you look at the weekly chart as well, and this is essentially going to be a very similar trade to what I did with Baidu. So I want to make sure, I don't just start buying up like all these beaten down names, because who knows, maybe those block sellers will come out, with more orders. But from a risk reward perspective, I do like this trade. This is another thing just to consider, just in general with all stocks. When a stock, especially on its weekly chart, this is the 20 period moving average. Look how extended Viacom got from that 20 period moving average. No stock can stay extended for that long without making a trip back to its moving averages. And Viacom, that's exactly what it did. So we'll have to see. I have an alert set on this one for $48.68. And I just want to make sure to manage my risk, tightly with that one if I do choose to put it on. So who knows, maybe that block seller comes and they just start unloading more and more. But I do think this is a pretty attractive risk-reward opportunity. Next on our list, we have Microsoft. So this is, a nice mega cap name we all know and love. Microsoft, what I'm noticing here is the price action is just getting a lot tighter, which is a good thing. And that's what I like when I'm looking at stocks. So one thing that you'll notice when a stock makes a leg down and it's getting super volatile and you're like, where is the bottom in this thing? I have no idea. A lot of times what I look for is tightening price action. So like, price starts to trade in a very narrow range. And that a lot of times says like, okay, there's not really like a crazy amount of selling pressure anymore. So what I'm noticing with Microsoft is it's putting in a nice little pattern here where you can see Microsoft. We look here. We have this trend where, from this low it just made, we're getting, here we had the low, which is, to me, it looks like a capitulation low right here, below the 50-day moving average. then we made a higher low, and then another higher low. So it looks like this one, I think this one definitely has potential. You know, these FANG names have kind of been dormant for the last several months. But yeah, we're making essentially equivalent highs and then higher lows. So Microsoft, I'm looking for a move out of this range here. I have my trigger level set as 237 spot 58. So it's got to be moving outside of this range for me to really get interested in Microsoft. Then next name we have on the list, we have XRT, which is the Spider Retail ETF. So this name just in general, or this ETF, you know, it's looking pretty strong here. You can see we had a nice bounce off the 50-day moving average. I will say that this is more like a reopening exposure. But yeah, this one, nice pullback, and now we're getting the lift higher. So I have an alert set for this one at $89.35. It's pretty much right above where we are currently trading. So we'll see what happens, but this one is in a nice uptrend. Next on our list for our last long, we have IT, which is Gartner Inc. This is a very interesting setup here. So this is another technology name. You can see it's been in a really tight consolidation here. And one pattern that I love to see in stocks is you're consolidating, and then you get a move to the upper end of the range on high volume. So if you look at the volume here, over the last 2 trading sessions, a big step up. So for this one, I have this one, you know, essentially at the top of my watch list for next week because I really like this pattern. And I have my alert set for IT at 186. It's pretty much right above where it is currently trading. Definitely one of my favorite setups heading into the week. So that is IT. Next, I have 2 shorts on the list. First one is Peloton. This is one of those names that had a really nice run when we were closed, when the economy was closed. And as we reopen, you know, I just don't really see, you know, I think people are going to want to exercise outside and go back to the gym, things of that nature. So I don't really see Peloton just making like a quick run back to the all-time highs, really. I think there was a lot of exuberance priced in here at the top. So I have an alert set. I want to short Peloton if it tags this 20-day moving average again. So my alert right now is set for 109 spot 58, and I will be looking for that trigger. So like say if we get a nice gap up on Monday, I'll be looking to short Peloton. Next name on our watch list for shorts, I have 2 shorts on here, is Wells Fargo. So Wells Fargo, it is in the financials group. It's a bank, and it is a relative underperformer that, in my opinion, has been pushed up just due to the strength in the sector. But one thing that I noticed is we got the announcement last week, okay, banks, they can reinstate their dividends, they can reinstate their buybacks, and we didn't make new all-time highs in the financials. So this is another signal to me, it's very subtle, that this trend in the financials is getting a little bit weaker, in my opinion. Where, like, if we look, for instance, at financials, you know, again, how I talked about things getting very extended from the 20-period moving average, look how extended the financials are. It never feels like something's going to retest the 20-period moving average until it does. I mean, I'm pretty sure the people that were invested in Viacom, they thought the same thing. This is never going to retest the 20-period moving average. It always does. So financials, you know, now that we're seeing this strength in consumer staples, utilities, etc., I do think there's going to be some nice shorts in financials, and I think Wells Fargo is one of them. So real quick, if you look at the performance of the financials last week, and again, this is short term, just a week, you can see the financials were only up 0.44%, whereas consumer staples, you know, for instance, up 3.31%. Real estate is another area where people go into it as the economy is decelerating. And we can see there's some strength in real estate now. Real estate over last week was up 3.29%. So what I'm trying to do is slowly add in these exposures, to staples, utilities, real estate. And then over time, I am going to start shorting financials, industrials, cyclicals, value stocks. All of those will be shorted. But like I said, given that I think this is still very early on, I'm not just going to run out and short all of those. And if the trend continues a while longer, I could be in trouble. But Wells Fargo is very weak. So if you look at Wells Fargo, out of all these banks, the banks made new all-time highs as a sector. Wells Fargo did not make new all-time highs. This one is still really struggling. So I think this one's setting up for a nice short. So I have, is my trigger level $40.27. So yeah, if this one gets, an extra little pop, I'll be looking to short it. Yeah, that about does it for this weekend watch list. Hope you all have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you all tomorrow in our pre-market session.